Here's something you don't see very often. Dude riding his mini bike on the SoCal freeways. There's the ABC7 report.
Crowded with cars. Clearly not on his way to his girlfriend's house. He's cruising without you don't have a girlfriend if you're on a mini bike. I'm just saying.
Are you
That's
kidding?
probably
I see tons
true.
of people riding
On
bikes.
that?
Okay, whatever.
This was captured on the 110 freeway. It's just so cool. The mini bike driver ended up exiting at Manchester Avenue. Riding mini bikes on any public street is against the law. Now, if
I guess he finally wound up running out of fuel on that. What a heck of a story, riding your mini bike. Of that, I like the clip of, yeah, you probably don't have a girlfriend if you're riding a mini bike. But that was something else. Just want to get to this clip a little bit. But if prices go up in 2026, it's not going to be because of Trump's tariffs or anything else. It's going to be, in California, it's going to be because of Gulag Gavin Newsom and the legislature and their stupid rules. Here's Ashley Zavala.
Now, California is the only state in the nation where you cannot buy alcohol of any kind here at the self-checkout station. At this Save Mart in Sacramento, for example, if you try to walk in with a bottle of wine, you're going to be stopped by a worker, or the computer here is going to tell you that someone needs to come over. But now, grocers across California want state lawmakers to seriously consider legalizing this.
Self-checkout stations back at the center of a debate at the state capitol. Labor groups and some Democratic state lawmakers are once again pushing a bill that prohibits stores from having self-checkout stations if they don't meet a cocktail of workplace requirements.
This is another one. California overregulating everything is going to drive prices up. One thing I agree with the union reps on is that is absolutely the case. This is Dragula. So we used to call it the coffin car out at Riverside Raceway back about 67, or I think that was in the parade. It was at Riverside Raceway, but that was an iconic car, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Barris brothers and Dean Jeffries designed that. That was on the Munsters TV show back when Herman lost the Munster Mobile and Grandpa in a drag race, and Grandpa built the coffin car and won it back and won the Munster Mobile back in a very famous episode of the Munsters. But that was their Dragula, I think, at the parade, and then at the old dragway at Riverside Raceway back in the mid 60s. 400% requests for paid protesters surge in DC. You didn't think there was a rent-a-mob? They're even coming out even now that Trump's in, the rent-a-mobs are up 400%. It is real. There is no making this stuff up. It actually does happen. The cartels are going down. Hopefully, Mexico to extradite 26 top cartel leaders to the U.S. in a Trump administration deal. Yes, the cartels are going down. That's just the threat of Trump saying, hey, we're going in. Mexico's saying, oh, we'll send them to you. Don't bring the troops in. Fontana is getting sued over street vendors getting unlawful and unconstitutional vending rules. We'll see how that shakes out. San Bernardino cops are on the chase again. Here we go. Maybe. Ooh, they found it. Don't be carrying illegal weapons if you're not legal yourself, whether you're a citizen or not. Hoover gang members accused of pimping children as young as 14 in Los Angeles. Keep telling you, and it's true, the cartels and all this stuff are running this running the human trafficking, whether it be labor or sex trafficking or drug trafficking, and that was all put on steroids by the Biden administration. DC marks a grand milestone as just hours after Trump's mode to federalize police department, the 100th homicide. That's why Trump's pulling in the troops. Over 100 arrests in a day. What happens when you turn the cops loose? Newsom and Izzy, his social media dude, are just flat out of control. Hopefully we'll get to this later on. Of course, Mexico hands over 26 notorious gangs to the United States. That, my friends, is what a leader does. There's that funky slide guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday live at 5 in the Evil FBU Network, Romo X, YouTube. On that, of course, we'll join the My Name at 1490 a.m. as we usually do at the bottom of the hour. Hopefully we'll have Susan Shelley on, as we usually do on a Wicked Wednesday. Some of the stuff, look at all the good things that are happening. Inflation down, the illegals are coming down. Mexico's turning over the cartels to Donald J., saying, please don't hurt us. Newsom can only copy Donald Trump on the social media network. What is it? Imitation is the purest form of flattery. So I guess Newsom secretly loves Donald J. Newsom wishes he was Donald J. But the legislature, and Friday we should find out what the ultimate gerrymander, which Gulag Gavin's trying to pull off in California. I'm looking at all the people. He's getting very trepid support on this, even amongst the establishment, amongst the people, most especially, that got to vote on this. I mean, he's making a Hail Mary pass. I get it. He thinks he's going to get I stopped Trump to win the nomination for the Democrats in 28. But if this backfires on him, ain't going to say it's going to sink his chances, but it's going to put a big kink in them. No doubt about it. They just continue to run California into the ground. What? Rivas, the assembly speaker, had to fire his press secretary over multiple allegations of sexual harassment. The Democrats, who are supposed to be purer than the wind driven snow. And they're having to be rescued. It's the ones that yell the loudest. They're the ones that are committing, most likely, what they're yelling about. We got Russiagate. We got the vax. We got all this. We have the riots, the illegals, the comprehensive immigration reform. All these lies, lie after lie after lie. Now it's coming out on Joe Biden and the DC crime issue. We'll probably have more on this as we get more thinks that are starting to tell the real story. But in order to get on shows like PMSNBC or The Nasty Woman on CNN, you had to say, oh, yes, Trump was colluding with Putin to steal the election in 2016. Oh, there's no crime. There's absolutely no crime in Washington, D.C. 100th homicide. One day after turning the cops loose, 100 arrests. And they're saying, yeah, we go on the shows and say, oh, crime is down. We know crime is thoroughly out of control in Washington, D.C. We had the deal of the cops, Fraternal Order of the Police, saying they're investigating one lieutenant or uppity up in the police department who was skewing the statistics. Sound familiar? We just have to look at the Bureau of Labor statistics. I have every confidence now that E.J. Antoni's in there, that'll get straightened out fast. Like they said last year when Biden was in, jobs were raining out of the sky. And then 2 months later, they were in the tank. These things, and the media, in order to get on these shows, has to lie. Has to tell what they know is not the truth. They know it. They live it. They see it. They have the documents. Yet for the almighty dollar, they will sell their soul. That's the bottom line in most of this. So the big question is a day for everyone, and especially in California, like we ran that clip of Ashley Zavala. They're going to blame Trump and the tariffs, and grocery prices are going up because Trump did this and Trump did that, and Trump. When it's the California legislature with all the stupidity, rules, and regulations. We're going to have a story hopefully tomorrow. And it's got a lot of double entendres on it. But it's like I said, 98.7% of this stuff is stupid government policies and corrupt, lying, unethical pieces of ish that are either elected or working in the government that will sit there and lie to us. Bold-faced lie. On any number of fronts. And it's getting beyond ridiculous that we have to put up on a daily basis with this kind of disingenuous. But really, as we say, Royism 101, if things are going wrong, 98.7% of the time, look in the mirror. We, the people, have been electing these stooges time and time again. And it's about time we start paying more attention. And like they say, most of the time, you can get to it, but the ones that get elected to the sewer cleaning commission or the school board, the city council, the board of supervisors, the ones that are going to be your state or local senators or governor or congressman, U.S. senator, or even president. Like Dick Nixon was in the Congress and vice president, then eventually president. Reagan was a governor. He's one. There's very few. You have to be you have to be a great communicator to go from, Reagan went from California governor to president. Trump went to president right off the get-go. Which I'm thinking back, who's done that? I mean, you got to go way back to somebody whose their first run was for president. But it's absolutely imperative. And the old saying is, the next election is the most important election, no matter what it is. That could be the special election if you're in Assembly District 63, vote for Natasha Johnson to keep Bill Asaley's seat. Whatever it is, however it is, whoever it is. They are all extremely important. And it's up to us. It's up to us to dig deep, go that extra mile, so we don't have to endure this. You see what's happening nationally with Trump? That can happen and should happen and only will happen in California if we get out there and turn it around. Nobody else is going to do it. Don't look for the next guy to look for it. We got some great news, and we got some more reinforcements coming in. To California. Scott Pressler, who ran most of the Pennsylvania Get Out the Vote campaign for Trump, said after the Pennsylvania, New Jersey elections in November, he's coming out to California. He's bringing his crews out to California, Oregon, and Washington, the whole West Coast. We've had, Shiloh Marks cleaning the dead voter rolls, and I'm going to ask Susan Shelley about that. And people ask, well, why is that? Well, if they weren't eligible to vote or they were dead or something and they were casting ballots, how does that make a difference? Well, I got a theory on it, but I want to run it by Susan to see what she thinks, because she's really been on top of the whole election issues, especially LA, where they were over-registered like 140 something odd percent. So, but as we usually see, the obvious, there's always a reason behind doing things, and it might not be obvious on its face. So we will eventually, and the old saying, the old cliche, we will reap what we sow. And we better start sowing the seeds right now for the 26 elections. The primaries in the 26th in June, the November election, first Tuesday in November. So a lot of your state or local races will be down to the top two, and some maybe like county supervisors will be determined in June. But this is why candidates matter. We got a great candidate in Assembly District 60 here, Moreno Valley, Paris, San Jacinto, and parts of Hemet. Ed Delgado is going to challenge the evil Corey Jackson for that Assembly District seat. So that's one of 6 we need to flip in the California Assembly just to knock down the Democratic supermajority, just to get them below 2/3. And if you got 2/3 vote, you can override a veto. The Democrats could leave 6 Democratic votes on the table and override Newsom, or you put Sheriff Chad Bianco, or Steve Hilton, Katie Porter, whoever you want to put in there in 26. If you don't know, that's the Assembly and the Senate, and it's like 4 votes. I think they get 3 or 4 in the Senate, which is half the size, so it's basically the same margin. They got 3/4 of both houses. 3/4 are Democrats. Tell me how the redistricting is anything but fair. is anywhere close to fair. It isn't even anywhere with any realm of possibilities. And the Democrats are pretty much gerrymandered out. That's why Newsom's in there running. Oh, threatening Trump, you got to back off. Because most of the guys that follow this election stuff, and there's Paul Mitchell is the one that's drawing the maps. You talk about partisan, gerrymandered. Oh, he'll do a hell of a job. It's going to be a funky map when it comes out. The Republicans were lucky to get the 3 seats under the 49-3. They figure it's going to be with that, but hopefully we reject that whole redistricting thing. And Texas has got to do it. The federal government said your district lines are not right. You have to redraw them per the Voting Rights Act of 64 under Johnson. So they are under court mandate. So those rats, that's why they're coming back. Because they thought, they were probably convinced that they were doing this on a deal. No. The federal government said, you are in violation of the Voting Rights Act. Texas, you have to redraw your lines. California is not in violation of the Voting Rights Act per
40 seconds, 40 seconds.
General's office. So, again, we're starting to shine a big spotlight on the cockroaches. And that puts a big smile on my face. As Jesse said, we'll be joining the Monument 1490 a.m. and hopefully Susan Shelley will call in. Very soon after that, we'll get her thoughts on this and some other stuff and chat about her columns of the week at Southern California News Group of that.
5 seconds. Here we go.
Not to be, but it's going to get better. Friday.
IE Newswire Daily is on the air.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliate.
There's that funky so live guitar music that comes on every Monday through Friday, live at 5:30 on the Mighty Met 1490 AM, broadcasting all over the Inland Empire in the aforementioned AM band. Join your vast video audience in the Eve Lippy Network, Rumble X, YouTube, and the Roy Blecker channel. Check us out, subscribe to all that good stuff. Mini Bike Rider on the freeway of that. And I love the quip of the ABC guy, got a chuckle. And the broad on there was a little annoyed, but he said, yeah, if you got a mini bike, you sure as hell don't have a girlfriend. And he told the truth. Come on. But anyway, that was it. Finally, he ran out of gas. I don't know how far. Mini bike only's got maybe a quart and a half of gas usually, unless they got bigger tanks. Because, they weren't made to ride long distances, but that was fun. He's out on the freeway of that, running through the cops and everything, but that's a story you don't see much every day. The cartels are turning over 26 gangs to the U.S., saying, please don't come into Mexico with your troops and because they know if Trump comes in there, they're in deep doo-doo, as George Poppy Bush would say. 14-year-olds, as young as 14-year-olds, are being trafficked by gangs down in L.A. We've told you, the cartels, Mexico, China, empowered by our governments, Joe Biden, Gulag, Gavin Newsom, and many others, are the ones that have allowed them to do that. Because they most likely provided the campaign cash in those brown paper sacks that got them elected. Again, we're getting all sorts of good breaking news. A lot of things are breaking our way since 2025, since the election of Donald J. We're getting the truth told out. They're actually, media members are actually coming out and telling the truth now. Maybe they don't feel as threatened. their jobs is threatened or things. But hopefully 25 going into 26 will mark a Renaissance turning point in our politics, in the direction of our country, back to being the United States of America, where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness rules. Because we've got, we're probably at one of these forks in the road, and which way are we going to go? But as we usually do on a Wednesday, we have the famed editorial writer, columnist for the Press Enterprise, San Bernardino Sun, Inland Daily Bulletin, Redlands Daily Facts, more important to me, Vice President of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Susan Shelley. Welcome to IE Newswire with Roy.
Thank you, Roy. Always great to be with you.
I want to get into this election thing because there's a guy named Shiloh Marks, or he's filing lawsuits and getting the voter rolls cleared up and all this stuff. And people ask, well, if they weren't eligible to vote, or they weren't voting, or they were dead, what consequences it make? And this has been my theory, but I want to see if you agree with it or have, because you followed the election stuff much more than me. But whatever it was in LA, they were over-registered 140% over what eligible voters. So what I'm saying is, if you clean those voters off, let's say there was 40% over registration in LA County, it makes it harder to cheat, because if you got to a point and your candidate or your ballot measure was behind and you needed to find a few ballots sitting somewhere, and you were at 60% of the vote, well, if you went to 70% of the vote, nobody's going to think about that, which is very easy to do if you're at 141% registration. Much more difficult if you're at 100% or less of eligible voters, and especially on a general election where you're getting a big turnout. It is going to be much harder to manufacture, find ballots. That's why I think cleaning the voter rolls is most important. Not that those people were voting, it makes it harder to cheat in other areas, Susan Shelley.
Well, it's very tricky. There are several different categories of registered voters. Some are active, some are inactive. And I know when Judicial Watch and the Election Integrity Project filed a lawsuit against LA County and settled it, what they got was the removal of so-called inactive voters. And supposedly, because of a settlement with the Republican Party in 2020, they only mail ballots out to so-called active voters. So I'm not exactly sure who's being removed from the rolls. I know that when the George Gascon recall submitted its signatures, there were a large number of people whose signatures were disqualified because they had been removed from the voter roll improperly. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that. What I think we have in our elections is a problem with people who receive a mail ballot and someone else votes it for them, and so they show up as active voters although they didn't vote. I think that is more likely where we have the problem.
And that's what my contention is that's what makes it look good. And that's why I was concerned about that settlement, because they said, oh, we're only mailing it out to active voters. But that percentage, because when you see the statistics of registered voters, it says in LA County, whatever the number is, 4 million or 5 million. Well, if there's 1.5 million people that are ineligible or dead or whatever, or moved away, or however it works, but you come up with a percentage of that and you still say, oh, well, you could have 111% of the vote actually come in of eligible voters, but it would only register like 80% on the statistics. And you would think, you wouldn't think that would be a problem. Oh, well, we just had a high turnout, when you actually had a turnout percentage that was over the deal. I know it gets hard in the weeds to look at, but that has been my theory of why you want to get the ineligible voters off the voter rolls. So you have a clean number that when they post at the county registrars of voters, That's the number of eligible voters, no question, in whatever county, Susan.
Well, you're exactly right. And it's also very important because in some of these local initiatives and recalls, it's a percentage of the registered voters that you have to get in terms of signatures. So if the rolls are inflated, then they're giving you too high a number, making it improperly difficult to qualify an initiative or a recall. So that's a big problem. It's federal law that we have to have accurate and up-to-date voter rolls. That's federal law. That was part of the motor voter law. That was the other half of it. Part of it was we're going to register people at the DMV, and the other part was we're going to make sure that the voter rolls are correct. But that second part, not so much in some of the states, including California.
Yeah, that's another big thing. Yeah, trying to qualify a ballot, you got to have another 10, 20, 30% signatures over what you should have if we had an accurate ballot count. So again, That's another reason why they want to do this. But I want to get to the redistricting thing. The map is supposed to come out Friday. The ultimate gerrymander of all gerrymanders is coming out Friday. First, I want to put this on the record straight. They're now, you're seeing reports, the Texas Democrats are coming back because that's been Gulag Gavin Newsom's big cry. Oh, Texas is doing it. Now we have to do it to counter them. Texas is under a mandate from the Department of Justice. They got a letter from Harmeet Dillon, the civil rights attorney who handles the elections for Trump and Pam Bondi, saying you are violating the 64 Voting Rights Act. You need to redraw your lines. That's why Texas is redrawing the lines, not because they are under court order to redraw the lines. So these Democrats are actually violating federal law by not allowing that to go through. That's why I think they're coming back, because that would put them under subject of the FBI arresting them and carting their rear ends back to Texas to get that straightened out. So this all that Texas is doing this and that is another total false narrative that's going out there on that. So that needs to be pounded at every opportunity. Everyone has to do it to say Texas is redistricting because they are in violation of the Voting Rights Act and they are under federal mandate to redraw the districts. Period. End of story. The second thing is this gerrymandered map is coming out by Paul Mitchell. Now, most people probably don't know who Paul Mitchell is. He's the ultimate gerrymander guy. He's been working with the rats for that. He also got control of Political Data, Inc., which is the area which, one of the biggest ones in California that did all the statistics. If you've ever ran for office, or most anyone, they used to do all the statistics and everything, so you could do that. It's inside the weeds. Mitchell got a control of that, and they're only basically working for they put out a letter 4 or 5 years ago, and it's been rumored it was bought with Soros money, but who knows? But they would only work with Democrats and especially left-wing nutcases. And Paul Mitchell is the one that's going to draw this gerrymandered map that's going to come out Friday. This thing has all the earmarks of backfiring on not only Newsom, but the entire Democratic Party if they're going to push this narrative, I believe, Susan.
I agree with you. I think this is a big miscalculation by the governor, who probably thought he would look like he was riding on a white horse to carry the Congress back to the Democrat majority, but I don't think it's going to happen. For one thing, he is fighting with the voters of California. In 2010, the voters said by a margin of 61% to 39% that they wanted an independent commission to draw the maps for Congress. 61% said that. And we already had it for state races. There was something on the same ballot that said, do you want to get rid of the independent redistricting commission? 59% of voters said, no, we don't want to get rid of it. We like it. We wanted to expand to Congress. That was 2010. So we also have the situation where the voters have really handed their heads back to the Democrats many times. Most recently, Newsom opposed Prop 36, the Tougher on Crime initiative. 68% of California voters statewide said yes to it anyway. And all of the politicians wanted it to be easier for local governments to borrow money and raise property taxes. That went down to defeat by 10 points. So it's not like the voters are on board with this backroom Democrat map drawing in order to elect a backroom Democrat majority in Congress. And then what are they going to do with that majority? They're going to reopen the border? They're going to raise taxes? They're going to put men back into women's sports? What exactly is their agenda for which voters in California should help them get a majority so they can achieve it? The idea that all of California is going to turn out in an off year for a special election, I think is delusional. I really don't see the Democrats putting the kind of money into turnout that they do in the regular election cycle. They put a lot of money into paying all these groups to do ballot harvesting and all the rest of it, and advertising and mail. Every dollar they spend on that is coming out of their effort to elect Democrats in marginal districts for Congress now. So I really don't think they're going to be successful at this. Voters had the opportunity to get rid of term limits, and they decided to make the term limits shorter. Instead of 14 years, they want to throw people out in 12 years. And the top two primary threw out the whole party structure being in charge of who the candidates are. The voters said, thank you, we'll nominate our own candidates. I just feel like the governor is completely out of tune with the electorate on this. I guess we'll all find out together, but I think it's going to backfire.
I'm pretty sure, because I talked to somebody that saw the internal polling that Newsom did on this, and he said it got defeated every way to Sunday, and the only way they could get it above 52% was just about to say, if this map doesn't pass, Trump's going to march you and your children to the gas chambers. I mean, basically, they had to push poll it that hard to get it to 52%. I don't know why they're on this death march, to think maybe they're just so cocky and arrogant down there that they think they're going to be able to pull this out. But with Munger, who originally funded this deal, a big, tech guy up there in Bay Area or whatever he does, rich guy, hedge fund or whatever he does. Oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger, former governor, who that passed under, and a lot of people, and even ones that are kind of on, or, in that clique, they might be kind of supporting it, but it's about as lackluster as you can, Susan.
Honestly, I think it's going to be a major fail. He's going to come to the voters. Ballots are going to mail out, if they stick to this schedule, October 4th. Nobody's going to care, but the Republicans will be very motivated to defeat it. And there were 6 million California voters who voted for Donald Trump, and they will not be happy with Gavin Newsom going up and down the state saying we must end the Trump administration early. I don't know where he's been. Everybody already tried to end the Trump administration early. He was impeached twice. He was indicted 4 times. He was shot. He was shot at. I think everybody's tried everything they could, everything they had to undo Donald Trump's presidency, and the voters are still with him. And they're still with the Republican Senate, and they're still with the Republican House. And the Democrats say they're doing this to save democracy, but the voters are clearly in the way of this plan to save democracy. I don't know what they think they're doing if they don't see that.
Shifting gears a little bit, your column this week, good riddance to the cafe penalties, Susan Shelley.
Oh, the cafe penalties. This goes back, this is a story after your own heart, because we love muscle cars, and muscle cars became illegal in the United States in the 1970s through federal regulations that required manufacturers to meet mileage standards for their whole fleet, average mileage standards. Corporate average fuel economy is what CAFE stands for, nothing to do with Starbucks. And here's what it did. It allowed the government to ratchet down the quality of cars, making them lighter, making them less fun to drive, making the styling boring, making the spare tires go away, everything to make the car lighter so the mileage would be better to meet this corporate average fuel economy. And where this really got sinister is that if you couldn't meet the target, you could buy credits from companies that made electric cars. Tesla made $2.67 billion last year selling credits. It was like half the profits of the company were from selling credits, not cars. If you want to know why Elon Musk did not care for the big, beautiful bill, that's because this was in it. The CAFE standards, this is the clever part. They set the penalty to 0 in the big, beautiful bill. So rather than wait to go through the whole regulatory process and the lawsuits and the rest of it, they said, oh, yes, we're keeping the whole thing in here. We're just changing the penalty to zero. So instead of hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties, I think the total was going to be, because the Obama and Biden administrations ratcheted the mileage up to it's going to go to 65 miles a gallon average fleet fuel economy, which is totally unattainable unless you average it against an electric car, because then you can say what the mileage is, whatever you say it is. Because they were going to have to hit that 65 mile an hour target, it was going to cost $14 billion in penalties for the auto industry. That's according to one of the trade association groups. Now it's zero. Now it's not $14 billion. Now it's zero. So that means that manufacturers, once they have confidence that this is going to stick, they can go back to designing cars that are fun and exciting, and we won't be stuck with these little lumpy-looking, high-mileage, lightweight cars that are a fortune to insure because you breathe on them and it's $2,000. You know, this has been so unnecessary. First, it was because we had to end our dependence on foreign oil. And then when that was no longer current, it was climate change. Well, it's all useless. It's just a big government regulatory scheme. May it rest in peace and never return.
That was in 1971. I mean, that was brought to you by Richard Nixon, President of the United States, and Governor of California, Ronald Reagan. This crap started back in 1971 is when these CAFE standards came in. And the other point you brought out, which is probably even a lot more important, can we get back to the manufacturers and the different, even the dealers between that? Can we get back to cars that look different? The ones I swear they all are stamped out of the same freaking mold. They all look the same. When you went back to the 50s and starting with the 50s and Harley Earl with the fins at General Motors and all that, and through the 60s and all that, styling, you could tell a Pontiac from a Plymouth to a Mercury to a Ford. They are, even amongst the General Motors and Ford and Chrysler dealers, the cars look different. That now they're all, it doesn't matter if they're built in Japan or India or wherever, or they're electric Teslas, they all look the freaking same. And that is something that it would be like, if they said, everybody has to wear a black suit and all women have to wear the same blue dresses of the same size every day. If you went out in public, that's what you had to wear. That's what our cars look like. And that affects your psyche. When you get into that mundane, everything's the same, that's a point, my contention, that's a point of subliminally controlling you to get you to conform, Susan.
Oh, it absolutely is. And it's so dreary. And when you go back and you look at the cars in the 1960s, you look at the sculpture, or the magnificence of the design of the Corvette and the other cars that were designed to appeal to people so they would buy them, so they'd be excited about them and they would buy them. And now it's just like, oh, I need a car. Oh, I don't want to go to the dealership. Oh, what a dreary, horrible experience this is going to be. And then they put a sticker on the window that says, oh, this gets 42 miles to the gallon. And it doesn't. It doesn't get 42 miles to the gallon. Your mileage may vary. And, it's just such a scam, and it's so unnecessary. But the manufacturers had no choice, because if they didn't meet this corporate average fuel economy, they actually had to build cars that they knew no one would buy. And the cost of all of that is in the price of the cars that we're selling. So the fact that they have to build a Nissan Leaf or whatever it is, and no one wants it, no one wants to buy a Nissan Leaf, but they need it for averaging because they can say it's got a petroleum equivalence factor of some phenomenal number. Oh, this gets 275 miles a gallon because it's electric. But they have some number that the Department of Energy calculates in their bureaucratic bowels. They calculate these numbers, and then that becomes actual legal material for compliance with this insane, unnecessary regulatory scheme. It's none of the government's business what kind of mileage your car gets. It's none of their business. You want to do a catalytic converter, you want to clean up the smog, fine. But the mileage is nobody's business, and people should be free to build the cars they want to build.
Tell them why they should join HJTA. Go.
Because the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association is the best organization in California fighting for taxpayers in the legislature, in the courts, on the ballot coming this summer. We're going to have an initiative that is going to get rid of these court-created loopholes that are making your taxes go up after every election. You must sign this petition. Go to saveprop13.com. As soon as the petition is ready for signatures, which will be right after Labor Day, we're going to have it posted, and you'll be able to print it at home, sign it, and mail it in. And we need 1 million signatures by February to get this done. We need your help. SaveProp13.com and the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Be a member at hjta.org.
Thanks for being on, Susan. We'll do it again next week.
Thank you, Roy.
You got it. Susan Shelley, their vice president of Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association and columnist extraordinaire for the Howard Jarvis News Group. Wow. And we're just on Hump Day Wednesday. Get to some of the local news real quick. Can't get the right one. There's Dragula at the Riverside Raceway drag strip back in the 60s. Had the one where it was at the parade. I think this is 66 or 7, if I remember right. But there's the one at the dragway that I didn't have on the front end of that Milvet. That's Raven Hilton's great group that assists, helps out, looks after all our veterans out there. So take them out. Paris Auto Speedway will have sprint cars and stock cars tomorrow. Rockabilly Nights coming to Riley Farms out there in Oak Glen. If you haven't been out to Oak Glen or Riley's Farms or seen some of their dinner shows, absolutely fantastic time. San Gregorio Historical Society shows you the old 100 years ago stagecoach days. That's right about where Jesse's in the show is actually signal goes out on KMET on that. Hemet Cops are kicking off their new enrollees for the Citizens Academy, so check that out. Temecula's Rancho California Road off-ramp on the 15 freeway to close. Drones, first responders are coming to Huntington Beach. Now, I think that's a hell of an idea for the drones to come out. Hey, is there anything you can do to get first responders there quickly? Another one of my ideas that didn't go anywhere. First responders, the fire department on motorcycles, they can get there quicker and save you money for a lot of reasons. 2 dead and 1 injured in a Moval crash. Clear the throat. Harupa Valley Station and Quilts Made with Love made a donation for kids who are in need for that. So good job for Quilts Made with Love. They're in Harupa Valley. Big Bear shop owner accused of psychedelic mushroom sales out of store. I could think of a lot bigger crimes they could get out to you. But yeah, 400% increase in the rent-a-mobs since Trump came in office. You don't think that's real? Yes, it is. 3 suspects arrested in Rancho Cucamonga after assaulting a juvenile victim. Oh, man. Mexico to extradite 26 top cartel leaders in the U.S. in a Trump administration deal. They don't want Donald J. in their country. I wonder why. Riverside County deputies arrest Turlock suspect for a homicide of a man found dead on Woodward Street near Paris. So good job, cops. On that, that'll do it for the local 24-hour news update. Again, I sense the winds of change are changing in the direction of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But don't rest on your laurels. We are just in the initial stages, not only of turning the U.S., but California around. That'll do it for today. We usually say at this time, mandatory you're back here in 23 hours. Why? To hear the best darn show in the whole wide world. Until then, see ya.
All right. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
You got it. Ugh. Come on. Fucking Christ, man.